According to the Queen Mary.
According to my clock, Mickey's big hand is on.
No, it was their contour job.
Is it full tour?
Are we ready to start the meeting?
Let's do it.
Of course, it got in California.
They'll throw blood at you.
Meeting
I know,
is
like
city
red
manager.
paint, yeah. How about these are?
Anybody in council?
Have a beaver pelt in my house and.
Oh, we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule.
You can, oh,
Wyoming,
you could wear it.
Wyoming Governor's
Fake.
Big
No,
Game
no.
License Coalition. Grant application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good to be with you tonight. We are pursuing some funding with respect to one of our longtime partners in the form of the Big Game License Coalition. And we wanted you to be aware of what it is we were pursuing. And so pursuant to that, if I could defer some time to Ms. Martinez to walk us through that, I'd appreciate it.
Mayor, Council, this grant is due the 31st of January. We have been the fortunate recipients of the Wyoming Governor's Big Game License Coalition grant since 2015. Hopefully we will be successful again. And what we're going to be looking at has to do with planting trees and pilot testing seeds. Some of our plants are not really robust in the riparian area, and we're trying to get a handle on that. We just finished a study, and this would be a follow-up to a study that we've just finished on soil and water and why trees and plants in the riparian area are not robust.
Any questions? What direction are you looking from us? Because it says direction requested.
Right, yeah. Well, we just need you to be aware of it for the most part. If you had any concerns with respect to our pursuing this, or if you're comfortable for us moving forward, we'd be happy to know that too.
Looks like you've got to go ahead. You bet. Grants for Garden Creek flood prevention. What's up next with that one?
Well, Mr. Mayor, we have the opportunity to pursue some funds, given our status, that FEMA has recognized, pursuant to our, incidents of dealing with floods over this past summer. Many of you recall the day of June 15th, where we had a number of just, torrential rain experience events and so on during that period of time, and particularly on that day, to the extent that we saw a lot of breaches along Garden Creek and so forth that affected people's properties and public infrastructure as well. We're hoping to take the opportunity to pursue some funding, given that eligibility status that we were granted, and pursue two programs through FEMA that would be in the neighborhood of $3 million and $2 million with respect to the BRIC program as well as the FMA grant program as well. Those two programs are aimed at improving our flood prevention infrastructure, if you will, and we are anticipating that if we are successful, we will have to provide a 25% match. However, we are hopeful that our stormwater dollars that we've accumulated over the years will be able to cover that expectation, should we be lucky enough to get these dollars. And so with that, if you have any questions, we certainly do our best to try to answer them. Otherwise, again, we just need your blessing to pursue that application and move forward.
Any questions from council members? Everybody? Looks like you've got to go.
Very good. We'll see if we can bring some dollars back to our community and get some of those things fixed up. Thank you.
I think the next thing is the Public Engagement Division Services.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, we have taken the opportunity to provide council with some ideas and insights, if you will, with regard to what we view as best business practices pursuant to facilitating media interactions and those engagements that happen from time to time. As council is aware, a lot of times the media will call our office, for example. They'll call the city attorney's office, and they'll call Jolene's office, and many times they'll even call you individually with regard to the request for interviews or for comments or whatever the case may be. As you can see here in the memo, we've given you some ideas as it relates to an approach that we could take from now on that would allow for the full facilitation of these interactions, so that indeed when you have those opportunities, hopefully we'll be able to help with some of the anxiety that typically comes when requests to visit with the media occurs. The council has the opportunity to not only hear what we're proposing or suggesting by way of those kinds of practices, but furthermore, what other insights you might want to provide additionally. We also would be interested in understanding, how formal you want to make these protocols, if you will, if at all, or if indeed what we've proposed is sort of an approach that you'd like to see us incorporate and work with you on as you get those calls from time to time as members of the council. We appreciate the chance to visit with the media and to try to get facts and information out for public consumption. The media is a good way to do that. And so our position is the more we can work with the media, the more we can work with those who have been asked to visit with the media, I think the better off we're all going to be in terms of getting good information out, consistent information, and information that's reliable and accurate and hopefully helpful. If I could, Mr. Mayor, invite Ms. Martinez up to walk through some of the steps that she has found to be successful in a number of formats. We would appreciate any feedback or questions you have thereafter.
Mayor, Council, so you'll see in your memo what things that we have normally done is that if we have a request for a media interview and we ask the media, what's the deadline? What are your goals? What are you wanting? The questions that you're wanting, and then we try and find who the best person to be interviewed is, that knows the information and that can speak very well to it. Then we get a time, date, we gather facts, because again, I find that there's nothing worse than being in an interview and they ask a question and it's on the top of your head, but you don't have a fact sheet in front of you, and you don't want to give just a fact that you think you know for sure. And so we put a fact sheet together. If it's something very technical, we put a fact sheet together on it so that the people are prepared for the interview. Oftentimes, either I or Rachel will go to the interview. We find that the best interviews are when the media gets the information that they want, and we are getting the factual information that goes with the questions that they're asking. And sometimes there might be a miscommunication going between the question that's being asked, and we can help facilitate that. We also look for B-roll and places where the interview should be, the background, and for the media to be able to get the photographs that they want for the interview. I think that it's a very successful way to do interviews. I think that it's successful for the person being interviewed, and I think it's very successful for the media because we're giving them quality work that they can also print, publish on Facebook, and whether it's video, any type. We want ideas really getting quality for everybody.
Suggestions, comments?
My only comment, I think you guys do this is more of just my comment. You guys do a fantastic job. I really appreciated the effort that you guys are putting into communication. I think it's grown exponentially over the the last few years of the work that you guys have done. Most recently, when I was doing the tree lighting event, that you guys, helped put together, was fantastic. It was amazing. So I think this is a great investment for us to be able to continue to work towards. Very, very impressed by the work that you guys do. So.
Thank you.
I think that any time that we're able to get in front of the citizens and try to explain things and help break things down for them, we're just always just ahead. And so the more we can do, the better. So.
Jai?
Yeah, I completely agree with what everybody has said. I guess my question is just around process. So it says in the memo that, that council may want to utilize media services that PED can provide. So in terms of how you'd like, or what would be most beneficial in terms of how we work together as a team, what does that look like? If, for instance, somebody calls me, do I say, hold on?
Well, I can give you kind of an example of something that we did in December that one of the counselors, we had a request for an interview and they didn't need it that day. So I have a list of the questions they were looking for. I talked to Carter, talked to a few people and said, who would be the best person to do this interview? It was kind of something different that we hadn't done before. And so we said, we think that this counselor, because this counselor serves on the advisory committee, et cetera, let's see if this counselor will do the interview. The counselor said yes. So I got a list of questions from the interviewer, the radio station, and vetted the questions and said, what are you really trying to ask here? Because some of the questions here aren't applying to the topic that you told me that you were requesting. It was very friendly, not adversarial in any way. And that list of questions, I developed all the facts, went to staff and said, I need all the facts on this. We had dates, times, all kinds of stuff. I arranged the interview. We agreed it was by the phone. And at the given time, I called counselor, the other staff person that was the subject matter expert on it, and me, and got on and called the media, the host or the radio interviewer, and went through all the questions. Now there were a few curveballs. And frankly, I interrupted and said, are you really trying to ask that question? Or are you trying to ask this question? I think that it went very, very, very well. And I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but I think that it went well. Also for Holiday Square, we prepared an entire list of facts. And so when Councilor Pacheco was interviewed or was doing anything with the media and talking, he had the list right there and he could answer nearly any question that was there. Now, Rachel is by his side, so if he needed, again, a subject matter expert, or we needed to go find additional information while the interview was going on, so it's not like, let us get back to you, then we're able to do that at the same time. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Councilor.
Yes, yeah, that's helpful. I guess just knowing the different ways that we can work together is what I was getting at.
So Mayor, Councilors, I guess to answer directly, I would suggest that if you did get a call, you can turn it over to us to figure out what they're asking. So then we have information we can give you, for example, and you can say, I think that maybe Mayor would be better to do it than me, or however you do it.
Yeah, to that point, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, this will be real quick. To that point of what Jolene said about what happened at the holiday lighting was, what was incredible, because that had never happened to me on the time that I've been on city council, and even as mayor, was the opportunity. Rachel was there, and I was calling her my handler the whole entire time, but because she kept me on where we needed to go, what we needed to do, and the process really, and they even prepped me beforehand. We had meetings beforehand, 2 meetings, one in person to kind of prep me over the stuff that was going on, and then they prepped, but then went over and prepped at the place. We went there and did that. So I think the communication for us is to reach out and being able to say, how do we do these things when we do interviews, can really help to mitigate how we prep for meetings or prep for interviews. Because I think we've been burned in the past, I think, as we all know. And I think when we go off the cuff sometimes, without talking points of what the policy of the city is, when we say our own opinions that diverge from that, it has to be distinguished. And it has to, we have to be really, really super careful on it. And they're really easy to work with. So anyway, that was a lot longer than I intended, Michael. I apologize.
I guess I just wanted to go back to what Councilor Sutherland's question about. Did you say that if we get a call to reach out directly to your office, Jolene, or would that be the best, sir?
That's what we recommend, yes.
Okay,
Because
okay,
it's very easy for us to call. I don't know if Stu's in here tonight, but it's very easy to call Stu saying, okay, I know you called Councilor Bond. What are you wanting in the interview? It's very friendly, and our attitude truly is it's beneficial both
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
It's not trying to keep council from media or put a block there in any way or come up with any artificial talking points. We come up with the facts and we let council direct what the answers are, but we have the facts of
Yeah.
what's council's stance on this, not what do you think, Councilor Bond, but what is council's stance, what is, et cetera. And we have all of it right there for you to deliver in however you want, but that it's a very mutually beneficial.
okay. Thank you.
Mayor, if I might just pick up on something that Councilor Pacheco mentioned that's been kind of kicking around in my head. I totally support this. I think it's a great idea. But seeing that how everyone here is an elected official, there may be opportunities or instances where you want to make a statement, not necessarily representing the city, but to voice your own opinion as an individual councilor. So I think it would probably behoove us to put some guidelines together, because I think that is, when you look at the case law and so forth, it's very clear that you have to differentiate in what voice you're speaking, whether it's, Councilor Pacheco as an individual elected or on behalf of the city. So just to say that, I don't think that the intent here is to say, oh, well, the staff's going to decide who among you is the most fit to speak to it. If you want to speak to it, then we'll work with you and make sure that it's very clearly delineated in what voice you're speaking. So,
Well, along those same lines, that is one thing that at times it's difficult to get the media to make sure that they fully understand. This is my personal, not council opinion, particularly if you have opinion that's contrary to what council voted on. And so that's also the rabbit hole they're trying to get you to go down. So be very cautious of that as well. That when you're speaking for the council versus your own, and make sure they fully understand that, which I think this will help out a bunch as well. So I think it's a good idea for most of the questions we get. We should probably go to the public information officer and get our facts together so that we are representing council more so than our individual opinions.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
So this question's for you, Carter.
Sure.
Is it better for trying to delineate, should we go to you first as a city manager, instead of calling PD and then getting the setup, since this is your staff? Should we call you as I don't want to mince hairs here, whatever, but should we call you first and be like, hey, that question asked for, do we do this as an interview, but I'd like to get set up and do something with PED. Can you help us out with that? Is that something you would prefer? How would you like that?
Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, that's a great question. Thank you for that. That probably would be a recommended approach as well. If you aren't opposed to contacting staff, in that regard, our office is probably the right place to go. And then, of course, we can engage Jolene's team and so forth, and put all that together. Oftentimes what happens is the media will reach out when they hear you say, well, I'm going to, refer you to staff. They may even go ahead and call Jolene's team directly, which is fine too, but yeah, I appreciate that suggestion. That probably would be preferable.
Okay, thank you.
Kyle, any comments? Okay, Just want to make sure I hadn't missed you.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Any other comments or anything? I guess, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Mayor, so I guess the question becomes, you know, we've heard broad support for the outline, if you will, that Jolene's team has put together here. Is what would council be comfortable with in terms of moving forward? There's been a suggestion of some guidelines being put together. Certainly the suggestion of sort of an understanding of, you know, referring back through our office, if you will, and so on. Is council broadly comfortable with those ideas? Are there other things you would like to add? Other stops along the way you think make sense?
I just have a question. So from what I understood with Eric is, so if there was just a special circumstance to where it was just us, that we could get together and then give us individually talking points. But then if it's over a subject that all council, then we would just all have those one. I mean, I don't know if we should all just be walking around as in just zombie mouthpieces. Because that's not really, I think, what we're wanting to do either.
Right. Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, I couldn't agree more. We certainly don't want to do that. I think, you know, pursuant to some of the suggestions that council has had in the recent past, working from a similar set of facts has been what's missing in the recent past. And some of the suggestions from among you have been, well, how can we work together to facilitate the appropriate facilitation of those contacts and getting the right information out, and information that isn't, you know, incorrect or inappropriate or whatever, while still allowing for individuals to have their certain perspective delivered in the appropriate context as well. So if I understood the attorney's suggestion correctly, I think I was hearing him say some brief guidelines to help establish the guardrails between representing the entire council versus representing your individual view. Maybe what is in line. Is that what you were?
Yeah, Mr. Manager, that's where I was getting to, because I think there may be an issue hypothetically that would come up, and the council may vote one way, but you feel very strongly and have a different perspective on that, and you're going to want to still be able to express that to the public. And I think just making sure that you're armed with, you know, the tools to express that and make sure that it's not being conflated with, you know, the entire council, and that it's clearly your perspective. And in those cases, I think, Vice Mayor, you know, we can certainly work with you one-on-one. I mean, anybody on council can come to us and work with us one-on-one, whether it's, you know, facts or talking points or anything like that. So that's kind of where I was anyway.
That help?
Mm-hmm. That does.
I think you had something else.
Yeah, I think ultimately what it is, and I agree with Lisa, I don't think we should be walking around like zombies per se, but I also think that there needs to be a clear delineation. And I'll make this point where we need to shut down all the airports in the state of Wyoming and leave up Natrona County and Jackson. And was not a policy of the state or the city, wasn't any of those types of things. And it was those types of mouthpiece type incidences that happened that created a lot of chaos for us. So I think if you're going to mention and say, this is my opinion, I think we need to make sure that that's somehow clearly stated. I don't think we're going down that route again per se, but I just think we just need to make sure that if you're going to talk for this, if you talk for the city, because we all do interviews, that you're going to be able to understand and know the policy of the city. And you can disagree with the policy of the city. You can disagree with how we vote. I just need to make sure that it's delineated from your opinion and policy of the city, because that's what has gotten us into trouble in the past.
I would agree with that. And along with that, if you are a dissenter, you need to be able to explain where the council came from and why they came up with that solution as well. So you do need to be able to understand both sides of an issue if you're asked to give an interview for that. So that's the other part of it as well. So, and that's part of understanding the issues. So, but I think what Eric was talking about as well is a good idea to have some guidelines or ways of ensuring that we are differentiated between personal and council. That's the biggie as well, because that can get us into, as former Mayor Pacheco said, that can get us into more trouble than than we can dig out of. So if that helps, is that kind of what you were looking for?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jolene. Do what? Oh. She's got holes in her pants.
Steve. Steve,
Yes.
hey, can I ask, maybe to say one other thing?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Missed you.
No, it's okay. Well, I was just, I don't know, Carter, I couldn't quite, I wasn't sure if you were asking, like, if we want to do anything further to like outline what we just discussed. Yeah. So I guess that's a question first, because I have a suggestion, if that is a question, but if not.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, absolutely.
Okay.
We were seeking that if there was any
Okay.
input.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, it seems like we covered three different things. So one is that delineation between fact, opinion, and policy. The second is the various opportunities we have in working with PED. And then the third is suggested approaches for engaging with them. And I'm just wondering if we could, I mean, even if we had those three things like in a memo to council as a resource, that could be useful. And I'm not sure if that's as far as you want to take it, but I think that would certainly be helpful to me as a resource moving forward if something comes up, just because memory serves me better sometimes than others. Yeah, so that was it.
No, I think that was an excellent summation. And that was what I was hoping we would get. So
Okay.
very good.
Well, glad to serve.
I appreciate the help. I can use all I can get. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess the next one, we're on to the budget amendment number 2.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, counselors, we have the opportunity to review some of the changes that we are seeing come forward, some of the changes that council has helped initiate as well, and make all those things reconcile with regard to the budget that council has approved. Generally, amendment number 2 comes around this time of year. And so the timing of this as well with regard to what you're about to see or have read about in the memo, is fairly consistent with what we work on from year to year as well. We get different grants, we get different directions, we get projects coming through that are in need of more money or projects that need to be rolled over, et cetera, et cetera. And that certainly is the case with this particular request of the council. One of the larger things that council will recall is when council was gracious enough to allow for staff to be given a one-time payment toward the end of the calendar year last year. That is being captured with respect to this amendment and pursuant to that direction. Another piece that council probably recalls and is one of the larger elements of this amendment is with regard to the work that we have been trying to do at the wastewater treatment plant for the MCC project that you'll recall we were awarded some ARPA dollars for last year. And we are in need of putting together the rest of the dollars for that project, which are fortunately much smaller than they would have been had we not gotten those grant dollars through ARPA and the state of Wyoming. Jill has some other things that she would like to review with you from a higher level, if you will, with regard to the elements of this proposal. But indeed, we would appreciate any questions that you have, any direction that you have. One of the things that I would also forewarn you of is once we get through this amendment and so on, we do need to come back and talk to you further about the wastewater treatment plant and a project that has become imminent on our near horizon that we're likely gonna need help from you, with when it comes to budget amendment 3. And that kind of thing. So keep, sort of a tab on that concept. Not a budget, not an amendment 2 issue for tonight, but nonetheless, something to be aware of that we are trying to navigate right now. So without further ado, Mr. Mayor, if I could turn some time over to Jill, that would be great.
Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me tonight. There's only 2 other items I really wanted to focus on in this budget amendment. It's the first one's with regard to our transit operation. So we actually had some additional federal dollars that were available to us that we had not budgeted at this point. So with that available money, we were looking to buy some additional buses and some vans that the transit division has recommended. So the nice part about this is those vehicles are an 85-15 match. So 85% is coming from the federal dollars and 15% is coming from the city dollars. So the total of those 2 buses and those 2 vans come up to $650,000. So our portion of that is only $97,500. So this is in the budget amendment for us to be able to purchase those. And we are looking for that $97,500 to come out of our direct distribution fund. The other item is kind of related to what we had talked about earlier today in our audit. In our police grant fund, we were noticing that there was a deficit in that fund. And we have been trying to, over the last couple of years, really clean up some of these outstanding negative issues. So in doing some research, we found that some of the, I can read my note here, some of the seizure funds had gone into the wrong fund. So we reclassified those into the correct fund. It was about $8,000. So we were still looking for about $16,000. This account has been in this deficit situation for quite some time. So it was very difficult for us to go back over time to determine what caused that. So at this point, we are requesting that we can move money from the general fund in the amount of $16,000 to make that fund whole, with the understanding that going forward, we will be reconciling that account on a regular basis so that this does not happen again. And with that, do you have any questions?
I just have a question, or I guess more of a statement, with the payment, the one-time payment that we had given to the employees.
Mhm.
It was under my understanding, I thought that we were giving all the employees a bonus of the $1,000. And I didn't know that the people who had been talked out of their levels, they didn't qualify to receive a bonus.
So we did not do anything as far as anybody who's topped out. Everybody who is a full-time employee within the city at the time that you all made the approval to do that one-time payment received the $1,000. In addition to that, anybody who was a part-time employee who had worked at least 1,040 hours in the year received a $500 bonus, which was about 20 part-timers. So the topped out did not make any difference as far as your wages. It was a one-time payment.
Okay, well, I suppose these people that have said these things to me, maybe I'll just direct them to speaking with you, because there's several of them that said they did not get a cent.
If you would, please direct them to me and we can figure out what happened.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You were talking about the buses that we are going to be purchasing. Since those are federal dollars, are they forcing us to buy EVs? Thank you.
I do not know. Is that a no?
That's a no.
Okay.
Just nothing against EVs. They have their place, but I'm not sure it's here after what we saw happen in Chicago and other places where battery lives just don't hold up. So that was why I was curious. So thank you for the head nod, Ms. Becker.
Mr. Mayor, and just to respond real briefly, you'll remember that when we had that analysis done, the recommendation from that analysis was we are ready to go in that direction and not equipped to make that move.
I knew that was what was in the recommendation, but with the push that the federal government has been giving towards EVs, I wasn't sure if that was maybe part of what was going to be attached to these federal dollars. So that was the only reason I brought it up even. So, yes, so.
I'm just gonna add a footnote to that conversation since it came up, that I do not want to give up the pursuit of not EVs, but hybrids. I see them in public transportation in other cities, so I believe the consultants told us they weren't available. I have evidence that that is not correct. I think it is a possibility. So I think, again, I agree with it. In this climate, battery operated vehicles are probably not the efficient way to go. But I think hybrids may be an opportunity to move, to at least take a step, both in the interest of fuel expenses and so forth. So I just want to make that footnote.
Any other comments about the budget amendment? Looks like it's what's needed. And I noticed the carryovers from past years as well, so.
Yes, we had a few items which missed budget amendment 1, so we are picking those up in this budget amendment as well.
Absolutely. Very good. Any other questions or comments by anybody from council?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate it. Business incentive options.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to direction that we received through the council goals process, we put together some discussion, if you will, regarding business incentives and what that looks like. And I really appreciated this discussion, this opportunity to chat with you a little bit, because certainly council and staff often gets the request to consider ways in which businesses can be assisted in their efforts to do good in the community. Be that through growing a local business, bringing a business into the community, doing things for the community broadly, and so on. You'll notice a big part of this memo was dedicated to those typical requests that we get from time to time. We also took some time to discuss some of the tools that are available to us. And as you know, those tools that are available to us are fairly complex and in comparison to other states, fairly limited in terms of their scope and the ways in which they can be used. So Liz here is prepared to walk us through these items and identify where it is that we may in fact have some opportunities to do some things and perhaps pursue the fleshing out of some of these opportunities. But there's also some places where we just do not have the statutory provision to move forward with. And our hope was that council could give us the insight that you have pertaining to things that you'd like to see with this and ways in which we can come more in line with what the spirit was behind the goal that was developed around this idea. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, if we could turn some time to Ms. Becker, that'd be great.
And as an opening comment, I appreciate your crimson and blue scarf.
Yes, it's SMU colors. Yes.
Oh, it's at least it's not purple and white.
Tomorrow night. Mayor, members of council, that was a little collegiate sports stuff.
Yes.
I think Carter did a great job of teeing up a little bit about this discussion topic for this evening. And this had been brought up a couple of years ago when you all wanted us to look at business development tools. And one of which was trying to incentivize businesses to expand here in Casper. This segues beautifully though with your next round of goals to us, which you'll be hearing from
Mr. Myers here in a few weeks about some of the goal updates on the ones that you set that deal a lot with some of our revenue opportunities. And so we do have a revenue team comprised of city staff as well as some policies we'll continue to bring forward. So I think the two work well together. You'll hear some of our recommendations off of some white papers that we're working on. But to kind of come full circle, kind of close out some of the questions that council had in the past about what our limitations are. We are thrilled that we're getting growth here in Casper, but with that, there are a lot of questions from especially outside businesses, but also internal to Casper businesses that want to expand about what we can and cannot do. So how we comprise this memo that was presented to you is we did share truly a white paper that Bill Lubin had done a few years ago about a variety of some of the most frequently asked questions about property sales and bonds and that sort of thing. And so we did attach that with that explanation. Also within this memo, I referenced some of the more common types of assistance. And many of you are probably asked these by business owners in town. Can we do tipping fees at the landfill? That is not allowed unless it's the necessary support of the port. One of the last tipping fees I remember us working with, for instance, is when we tore down the Casey Apartments over on Kimball Street and made way for some new residential low-income housing. We also did tipping fees, which again is the demolition work is taken to the landfill on the Wyoming Bank Building Apartments many years ago. So the tipping fees, which evolve again from the demolitions, are typically for some of our low-income blighted properties that qualify for Article 16, Section 6. 99-year leases on public property. We did one of these back in 2007 with the Legacy Apartments that are in North Casper. They're at Elma and K. That is a 99-year lease that functions with that residential development that again supported senior affordable housing. We have been asked previously about waiving permit and tap fees. I know my department oversees the permitting fees and Mr. Brower's team within engineering oversees the tap fees. Again, not allowed. And again, no public improvements can be gifted or donated to a private entity. So we are not allowing that at this point. Reductions in property taxes. The out-of-state companies that come into Casper are the ones that are typically saying, hey, I got property taxes waived for my first year of operation from this other state. Can you all match that? And that is not something that you all oversee, that we would be allowed to honor the waiving of property taxes in particular. I know there's been questions about sales taxes, but that again has been something that I don't believe any of you have ever leaned towards, but we do get that because a lot of states do offer that as far as their economic development tool chest. Facade improvement grants. We had these for a number of years when we were a CDBG HUD entitlement community, and we offered up a program that was a match program with those federal funds. So what I defined here is only allowed with federal funds, and we were able to match the federal dollars to the CDBG program with the private match from the entity that wanted to upgrade the exterior of their property. We use that a lot, not only in the old Yellowstone district, but also in North Casper and also in parts of downtown to fix up the front of commercial properties. And we emphasized that in the policy that we had developed back in 2008. But then again, that program went away in about 2018. And finally, the other one that gets asked a lot about is the deferred payments. And a lot of times when we are working with the developer, this has come up as we look at the economic development programming, and deferred payments, as I've stated here, are only allowed if the city has a security interest in the real property. And typically it has to be the first position. Obviously, if we've got, especially our own property, we do need to maintain that first position ahead of any financial institution. The second page of this memo, Carter had asked me to really hit on two of the more typical mechanisms that are statutorily allowed within our state and our area. And these have been discussed many times in years past. Tax incremental financing, the TIF district, has come up previously under Mayor Mary Barron's long ago. That was first brought forward and research done on a TIF in Casper. Then we were looking at potentially doing a TIF when David Street Station was proposed. It does come with a development plan. It comes with a decision by this body on a TIF. It comes with a base year. It's $25, 25 years as far as the project year. Cheyenne, we did some work on what Cheyenne had done with theirs, the pros and cons with their downtown development area with TIF funding. Ultimately, we did not see this as a kind of a quick turnaround. It takes a while within that 25-year period, especially on the property taxes, to see the increment payout. And so it was not going to be that we would see hundreds of thousands of dollars through a TIF. It would be definitely gradual. It's to say that we don't have some opportunities with specific projects that we would bring forward to you all if we felt that a TIF over a 25-year period might help with the downtown beautification program, something that could be gradual. So that is one that we will be presenting further work on through a white paper to you with the upcoming revenue goals. An urban renewal area. The URA, we were fortunate long back in early 2000s when Carol Crump worked with the Casper Urban Renewal Agency to create the urban renewal area, which was and became the Old Yellowstone District. That was done through HUD. It opened up opportunities for federal funding to come in and assist, and us to be able to tap into some other programming, funding programming, because it was an urban renewal area. There may be areas within Casper that we as a team want to designate that has blight that we see potential for anywhere in Casper, and we could look into doing that. Again, there is a process involved in that. And again, that involves you. We will be bringing forward again a further white paper on what URAs would entail, pardon me. And that could be as far as, the pros and cons with it, the funding mechanisms that could spin out of that. But the URA has since closed out on the Old Yellowstone District. Those with HUD usually last about 10 years each. And so we have utilized that to our benefit since 2005, when the first one, pardon me, it may have even been before that, when that first district was designated. But it did allow us to get into a teal grant that got work done along West Yellowstone, and then also to qualify us for all the CDBG funding programs that we used again until 2019. So those programs are allowed, and there'll be more to come on those. Carter did want me to highlight that this evening with you all. So you've seen the ones that we have hesitations about through the attached white paper. You've seen the ones that are much more localized in my little mini assessment. And then also the ones that we do have that are statutorily allowed, that you will be hearing more about as we continue forward with revenue goals with what you've established for us. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments? Awfully quiet tonight.
A lot of information.
Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Just two-part question, and thank you. This is really helpful. I feel like a lot of it, I have a lot to learn, but I'm just curious about, so you said that there are some areas that we could look into as designating URA. What is that? Like, how long is that process?
Mr. Mayor, typically with the URA, and we have utilized, case in point, Cheyenne has recently done one with the Hitching Post property. And so in working with their community development team, Craig and I had been asking a little bit about that, because it does come with council approvals and going out and filing the URA. And that is usually about a 6-month process. Was there a part 2 to that?
Well, yes, kind of. Thank you. I was gonna let you off.
Right.
No, I'm just curious. You said we'd be hearing more and I was just curious when we might be hearing more.
Well, I think you need to have Mr. Mayor, you have to have the fabulous overview of our council goals by Pete Myers.
Oh,
And I think that performance will be outstanding here in a few weeks, and then you'll begin to hear more from our various kind of subcommittees. All of us within staff took on some of these goals, and Carter had us assigned, and you'll begin to hear those reports coming throughout the spring. So, and we meet regularly and should have updates for all of you.
all right. High expectations. Pete.
Absolutely. Pete, I teed it up for you.
Sounds like more spreadsheets.
He is the best at those. Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you for the update and the information. Utility billing follow-up. So, Mr. City Manager.
You act like it. Usually.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the chance that council has requested to entertain additional study with respect to a couple homework assignments, if you will, that you gave staff that we tried to capture the results of in your memo here, and elicit more discussion pertaining to the proposals that are contained within the ordinance draft that you've been reviewing for the last several weeks. Council will recall that you asked to table the second reading until next week to make room for this discussion tonight. And like I said, we did our best to try to capture some more information for you pursuant to what we thought were some of the more prominent questions that council had during the last review of this topic. And primarily the topic that council is most digging into, if you will, and finding more about is the idea that landlords could have more responsibility pertaining to outstanding balances associated with their respective properties. And so that sounds like is the issue of most interest here lately. Pursuant to that, Bill and Brandy have done a lot of homework on those questions and made a lot of calls and tried to understand a lot of the current business practices around the state, and are here to report to you with regard to what they found. And so if it would please the council, I'd like to turn time to Jill and Brandy in that respect and entertain any questions or further direction that you might have with this conversation.
Mayor, again, thank you for having me tonight. There has been a lot of discussion about this ordinance. In the memo that we provided to you, we tried to address some of the issues that we were hearing coming up with, again, great ideas from the council. So one of the things that had been discussed is whether we would hold a deposit indefinitely, or maybe we hold it for 5 years, or some variation of what we were proposing. So when we really started looking at that, the 5 years was kind of an arbitrary number. I think it was kind of tied to how long it stays in collection before we actually write it off. That doesn't really correlate to a deposit. So we aren't really requesting that we change anything that we are proposing. And the reason why is because we currently already hold the deposit if somebody doesn't pay. So we hold it for as long as we need to until we actually get 12 months of good payment history. So I put a little example in the memo to kind of outline what that looks like so that it's very linear, so that you can see if they don't do this, then this is what happens. So if we have somebody who is chronically late, we basically do hold their deposit indefinitely until we can get that 12 months of payment history or they vacate the property. The second one that I believe you were really focused on was whether to even allow tenants to have a utility account. This was an interesting concept. I think Councillor Jensen, back in the original discussion of this, had suggested that, and it wasn't something that seemed to be gaining traction. So we did go out and look at a bunch of different municipalities and see what do they do to give us some idea of, is this something that makes sense? So we looked at, there's only 2 municipalities in Wyoming that we talked to that actually do not allow the tenants to have an account in their name. One of those is Cheyenne. So Cheyenne does not permit it. They do allow for the owner to put the tenant's name on their account, but ultimately the owner is always responsible. The second one is going to be Laramie. So Laramie also does not permit any kind of tenant to have an account with their utility department. It is all held in the owner's name. All of the other municipalities that we've talked to, which was quite a few, typically allowed the tenant to have an account in their name, but they did hold the landlord or the property owner responsible for if the tenant did not pay. We also looked at what does the private utilities do? What does Rocky Mountain Power do? So they were kind of interesting when I talked to them. They discussed they don't transfer the tenant's money or bill over to the owner. However, once it goes delinquent, they stop the tenant and they put it into the owner's name and it continues on from there. And then they start to collect on the tenant. So those are some of the ways in which other municipalities and other private utilities, public utilities manage their tenant versus owner accounts. So we are not requesting that we do anything different than what we are proposing. We do believe that to have the utilities stay with the property makes the most sense. So by doing so, we are trying to improve collections, is really what we're trying to do. And then the third item, I think I actually skipped one. The third item, I think this was Councillor Gamroth's idea, where we could go ahead and notify the owners, but we don't actually hold them responsible. So we appreciate that comment. However, we don't believe that that will help us with our goal of trying to do collections. So in all of these things that were recommended, we are requesting that council continue to consider our changes as we have proposed them. I have this ready if you guys would like to do this. I think that there's a lot of confusion on when does the owner become responsible? I mean, is it right away? Is it, when does all of those things happen? And when we came here last time, there was actually something that Brandy put together for us that had each item lined out. And it said, you know, when this happens, then we can go here and go here and go here. I have that here that I can put on the screen. And if you don't mind, it might be helpful to walk through it.
Yeah.
It will only take about 5 minutes or so, if that's okay.
I think that's a very good idea.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to start in the beginning because that's always the best place. Maybe I have to make it a lot bigger so I can see it. Amanda, could you kind of focus on just the table?
All right. Let's see.
The second one. One more. Oh, great.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, so this kind of follows how we do our billing and when things happen. So we start out where we have a tenant that's in a property and they get a bill for their December usage. So we issue the bill. And then if they don't pay, they don't do anything. At 28 days,